Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cyber Hack. And today I will be going over what on a resume stands out to me. Now, I have literally been sitting through and monitoring, reviewing, overseeing over hundreds of resume, hundreds. And there are a few things that actually stand out to me. And the one thing, and I would say probably top 5 items that I actually look for on a resume that stands out significantly across the board, that is my decision maker. But of course that comes to availability and the response of when you're actually interacting with a person across, whether it's on a video call or in person. So it definitely does play a role in every little aspect of it. It just is not just all about what you know and how you do things. You have to be able to express all that. So let me go through the top 5 things that I look for on a resume before HR even gets involved, or you get a call and say, hey, we would like to set up an interview or, a screen call or whatever it is prior to actually sitting through an actual real interview. So let me just go over right now. Number 5, as far as what I actually look for instantly, is the formatting of the resume. It has to be easy to read. And there's so many different categories of, ways of doing and putting together a resume. But overall, when I look at a resume, I have to actually see that I could sum it all up in one word, right? The other day, someone passed me a resume and I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, this seems to be more like a person that deals with policies and procedures, not so much a hands-on technical person. And that's the vibe you get instantly as far as formatting, because it'll illustrate what they know right away, right? So that's number 5. Number 4, I would say certifications. As much as you guys probably dread taking certifications, and there's tons out there in just satisfying one particular expertise. Like just cybersecurity alone has like dozens of certifications that fall into different categories. You got the blue team, you got the red team, you got all these auditors, and it's like an endless list, right? So you have to really pinpoint on the certification. What job are you applying to? What certification actually accompanies that, right? So CISSP is pretty broad. Obviously, because it has like 8 domains and it covers every different aspect of security that you can imagine. But, a lot of people still say it's the gold standard of cybersecurity. And then, of course, you have OSCP, which is really niche to the pen tester world, right? I wouldn't care if I had a position open for governance, risk, and compliance, GRC, and someone had the OSCP or CEH. I'm like, okay, you have some knowledge in the technical aspect of it, but we need to have more qualifying person that knows GRC, the governance and compliance and risk, and handling that, right? So I would probably, if that position was specific to that, I would probably consider something like the C-Risk from ISACA or something like that. So certification to what you're trying to apply for definitely matters. So that's number 4. Number 3 is your experience. Now, I get a mixed bag of these, right? I get a lot of people who've never had any experience and wants to break into the market. That's awesome. But illustrate what you have done, whether it's in school, training, personal training, and especially obviously if you don't have any work experience, you have to list all that. Labs that you've done. I've seen some resume where it was so like out there, right? Like so abruptly entertaining, I would say in a way, because they would illustrate and like on paper, which is amazing because as you're reading the resume, you're seeing like this person obviously has no work experience because they didn't list anything. If they did, they would have, right? Or the work experience has no relations to what they're trying to apply for. So what they do to compensate for that is put other items that they've learned about the industry or for the position that they're trying to apply for. Let's just say a SOC analyst, right? Or a junior pen tester. Never had any experience doing that, but they can illustrate it on the resume by saying, oh, I've done Hack the Box, I've done this many boxes, or TryHackMe, whatever, so on, so forth. I've studied for this certification. And again, that's where the certification actually helps in this situation, because now we know, or now I know, you have some type of knowledge in the industry, in that particular position for that type of job, but you have no experience, but you're trying to break into it. So that's number 3, all right? Number 2, what I look for, and it really depends sometimes what I'm being told to look for specifically, I do look at location. Now, most of the time, the job that I'm looking for to fulfill is remote. But I'm also given a directive to find someone that's close to an office. And it kind of contradicts each other, doesn't it? So 1, I'm looking for someone who's remote. But 2, possibly look for someone that's even closer to an office. So you do have a struggle there because across state lines, just within the United States, you get a varying range of salary. You have lower cost of living in different states, comparable to, like, let's just say middle states in the United States versus West Coast, East Coast, specifically like California and New York, two big ranges and higher cost of living and higher salaries. So, looking at demographics is definitely a consideration. But if the job is listed somewhere and you're not crazy far, let's just say New York has a posting and you're all the way out in Indiana, all right, or Ohio, or you can name it, Phoenix, Arizona, or Texas. Let's just use Texas. And you're applying for a New York position that is fully remote. There is a chance that you may be hired, depending on your skill set. And if the hiring manager or the HR person looking at your resume really feels like you have the skills, and during that moment is that you are willing to kind of have an flexibility to commute. If not saying that it's a daily thing, I have seen some organizations where they pull in people like once a month, right? Not too extreme, but still a hassle, or once a year, if that. Okay, so there are companies that do that, and I know they do because I've seen it. I've heard it from other people. Not necessarily all the time, but it is a consideration when you're applying for these roles. Now, the worst is when you're looking for jobs now and they all say hybrid. Now you're really limited, right? So it's not full remote, it's hybrid. And you do have to find a way to whether get into the office 2 times a week, 3 times a week. I have seen some where it's 4 times a week now. And I think the reason for that is not about productivity. I'm gathering a lot of the consensus from the social media platform is that the reason why they want people to come back from remote work back into the office is to have control. It's just to have control. Whether you believe that or not, I do believe that to some degree, but I think they may word it where we want people to interact and have more collaborations in office. So you can take that however you want. So that would be another criteria. And that's not something you can control, to be really honest, right? If you happen to live in Texas and you're applying for a job, supposedly a remote job in New York or Florida or whatever, any other state or any other travel distance that's beyond reasonable, which is like anything beyond 2 hours is just crazy, in my opinion. Unless the company really feels like you qualify and they really want you and you fit right into their budget, they may work something out. Just saying. All right. So we're up to number 1. And I don't feel like this is number 1 as in a high priority number 1. I feel like this is number 1 because it's like on the lowest spectrum. And maybe this should have been number 5, really. Meaning if 1 was the top priority and 5 was the least priority, but it still has a play into my decision in making, selecting a person for a position, through their resume. It's going to be education. Unfortunately. Now, a lot of you may say that, well, why do you need 4-year degree into, getting into cybersecurity or any other profession for that matter, right? You definitely don't need 4-year degree to hold a hammer and build a house or anything like that in construction. So why do you need it in cybersecurity when there's trade schools and there's self-taught programs or training courses that you can take outside of the 4-year degree? Well, let me just explain this. Again, this is more of a personal preference. Now, I actually made a mistake. I put this as number 2. I thought I had more, but I do have a bonus one at the end. So I want you guys to watch this to the very end because I'm going to tell you guys what the bonus is on my decision on making a hire. So stay tuned for that one. Now, the one thing I want to say is in regards to education that I probably missed the first time recording this around was that when you have a degree, whether it's 2 years or 4 years, the college education really tells me that you just have the basic concept, comprehension of reading, writing, and all those basic necessities. I know you learned all that in kindergarten, all the way to middle school and high school. You can read, you can write. But there's a certain level of skills when you actually have a college education. I'm not glorifying this by any means. Trust me. I'm not saying going to like these high elite schools where you're paying thousands of dollars and you just have to pay it back after finding a nice cybersecurity job. So that's all I'm saying is basic comprehension of reading, writing, some kind of knowledge skill thinking, critical thinking. School apparently teaches you things like that. Patience. It teaches you patience. For sure, it teaches me. It has taught me a lot of patience. So let's continue on with the video. This is like really on the low end. Going downward is like, I don't look or consider someone skills and experience, that overrides their education. That's just how I see it. I've seen so many resumes where I just glance over the education. Oh, I have a BS or BA in something from this college, and I've never even heard of the college. Most of the times I don't even know where these colleges are because I'm not from that state, and I'm actually looking at resumes from around everywhere, from Canada to United States. And even within Canada and United States, there's so many universities that I've never even heard of. So it's like, I don't know whether they're legitimate colleges or not, and even if you have a real degree or not. So that's like another back end thing that has to be validated, right? Like, let's just say you claim to have a bachelor's degree from a college that I've never heard of before. If we go through the interview process and we like your skills, we like your experience, the college in question would probably come up a later time. So the college in question may come up at a later time, or it may never come up at a later time. But even if it was missing from your resume and you have all this experience and you have all this skill that you can fulfill the job, education becomes a little bit of, it could be there, it may not have to be there. But somehow, some way, I usually take a quick glance, and it doesn't make my decision final based on if it exists or not. But I do want to list it here because I'm not the only one viewing it, because HR may have some criteria saying that we need someone with a college degree. End of story. And this person doesn't have it. I've been through that. Not me personally, but I've been in jobs and I've been in positions where I'm looking at resume and I find that this person fits perfectly fine. HR comes back and says, well, he doesn't have a college degree. And I just have to give up. I don't have a say in that. So that's why I listed it here. So I just want to go down the list again. So number one, I said personally, formatting. It has to really illustrate what it is that you're trying to sell. If you're going to sell me a car, it better have all the features of the car and not anything else about what I can eat and how much weight I have to lose and all the other stuff if I go into a car dealership. It has to be precise and to the point. That is formatting. All right. Sell what you're trying to apply for. Meaning if you're going in for a SOC analyst position, it better sell a SOC analyst position person. All right. And two would be certifications. And this kind of leads into the no experience or with some experience or with a lot of experience. Certification really dictates what field you're trying to get into. If you're taking CISSP, Security Plus, CISM, and all these other cybersecurity related certifications, start niching down on what exactly you're trying to get into specifically. All right. Security Plus and CISSP and CISM, very broad, very high overview. But then, of course, there's, other exams that cater to specifics, right? If you have, let's just say CRIS, you got CISA, you get into auditing, you go OSCP, and you go, what was it, EJPT, Junior Pen Tester. Anyway, one of those. That's telling me that you're trying to get into that field, you're trying to get into that arena, and you're taking these certifications because you want to know more about it. CEH can kind of be a little debatable, but we'll leave that alone for now. So that's certifications. No experience on a resume, but illustrate what you have been doing that makes you think you qualify for a entry-level cybersecurity position. SOC analyst, threat hunter, junior pen tester, super junior pen tester with no experience. How do you get or break into those fields if you don't have any experience? And I've done plenty of reviews on positions on Indeed, LinkedIn about junior position, beginner positions, but they want you to have 2-3 years of experience. How is that even possible? Well, this is where you glorify yourself by selling yourself, by listing out all your experience, what you know, what you use, the tools you play with, the labs you joined, the things that you paid out of pocket to learn, things you learned in school, your education, your certifications. That is where it all comes into play. Because remember, I said, I don't really look at education, but if you have a cybersecurity background in a 4-year college, right? If you've been studying, you have to know at least a little bit of something in order to get this position for a junior pen tester, okay? Or SOC analyst, or whatever it is that you're looking for to do, all right? GRC stuff, or compliance, or getting into an industry where they're specifically technology-based. They're a vendor that sells cybersecurity services, products, anything. If you've used it, list it. And if you could display that in a format on a resume that sells you, knowing that as an expert in that, I guarantee you that can be a decision maker. All right. Number four was not something that you can actually control, but obviously as you're applying for position is location. And every job, every company is going to have their own requirements. It'll never be published. All right. It's never going to say you can't apply for this job because you live halfway across the world or in a different state. What they can say is, are you willing to relocate, even if it's a remote job? So please take in that in consideration. The last thing you don't want is to get to a point where they hire you, it's a full position, full work position, full remote, right? You're working, and one day policy changes and says, hey, we need everyone back in the office. You said that you lived not that far, so we need you to start coming in. But during that time, you decide to move halfway across to another state that has a lower cost of living. Yeah, kind of puts you into a predicament. And the company, has every right to terminate whatever it is. So just be careful of that location. All right. Some may mention it up front. Please ask all the questions, if you ever have, that's in the back of your mind, to the HR, the hiring manager during that time, because you don't want to ignore it, especially if things start to change, which we have seen things are changing pretty rapidly from remote to hybrid to coming back full time. Just saying, guys. And the last but not least is education. This plays a factor. Now, here it is for beginners. Now, not so much for a seasoned, experienced person, because me personally, I have seen individuals who have 20 years of experience. No one is even going to look at their education anymore, right? But as an entry level, as a junior person coming in, I'm going to look at your education, because if your education lines up with what you're trying to get into, I will use your education as leverage to say he knows or she knows what they're talking about, and they potentially can fill this position and do a great job. Meaning, if you went to school, a 4-year college, learning about cybersecurity, on how to perform SOC analysts and working with SIMs and working with endpoint detections and all that great stuff that you will learn in these colleges. Let's just say I'm just guessing. I don't know what 4-year colleges teaches in cybersecurity. But if you have those basic knowledge and you have no experience, but you have a college education related to cybersecurity into the field that you're trying to get into, that would be taken into consideration. Why? Because that shows that you have some type of knowledge. You would get a seat in front of me if I'm looking for a junior person. Okay. That also ties up with how much education you're teaching yourself outside of the 4-year college with your own experience, meaning you're learning, right? You're getting certifications, even though you don't have any experience listed. Right? That works in your favor. Now, I said that I was going to give a bonus, and here is the bonus. When it comes to dictating a salary, never, ever put a definitive numbers. I've seen it so many times over and over. I like the ranges. I see the ranges. I'm like, okay, we can work with that. And I also like the fact, and this is big bonus, I like the fact when someone actually, even though they give you a number range, you put in negotiable. That is awesome. You know why? Because I see you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you have some experience, and you're flexible. You're adapting. That is what makes or break a final decision, in my opinion. Because now I'm thinking to myself, can I get him on the lower end? Or am I paying premium for this skill, right? For this person? And that's the challenge, right? It's not about you being the challenge of challenging yourself trying to land a job. As a hiring manager, I'm challenging myself to find the perfect fit. That's a challenge, a real big challenge, finding the perfect fit for the right amount and to fulfill this position. And my goal as a hiring manager is to make sure that I do a good job in fulfilling that. Because you being hired, let's just say by me, is a reflection of me, because I screened you, I went through the interview process with you, and I had to vouch to put this person into this organization, and I am responsible for that. Because ultimately, as a hiring manager, I'm interviewing, I'm approving, and then I'm going to manage. So the better job that you do, the better job that reflects on me. And I think, as far as putting in the bonus, I'm not saying bonus as in monetary value. Bonus for the information that I'm giving you now is when it comes to salary and having a higher potential being looked at, is put down, in my opinion, negotiable or a bigger range, right? I've seen bigger ranges. I'm seeing specific numbers plus like 100,000 plus, or, that sometimes it's just like plus. I mean, I look at it and be like, okay, all right, this guy is probably wanting a lot more. And I see ranges. I'm like, okay, we could work around that. It's flexible, right? But when I see negotiable or we can discuss about it, I'm like, oh, great. This is awesome. This is where, your negotiation tactics and my negotiating tactics come side to, one-on-one, side by side, and we'll work something out. If everything else lines up, right? Your formatting, your certification equals sort of like your experience, real world experience, and then maybe your location, depending on, where we're looking on or what we're trying to accomplish or what we're trying to fulfill, and your education, because let's just say you had no work experience, but you had some certification, and now you have a college education or, equivalent, then all of that comes into play. And plus the bonus, where I said salary, don't ever list out specific numbers. You have a range, or you say negotiable, or we can discuss. Perfect. You guys, that's the line item that I'm looking at. And putting all that together, I say these are the top 5 things that I really, analyzed. There may be other things, but for the most part, this is it. This is most of it. All right. I want to thank you guys. Please hit that like, comment, and subscribe. If you really like this, please comment below. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. I know if you watched it this far, I appreciate you to the max. All right. Talk to you guys again soon. Bye.